And so, with me this afternoon is Helen Wesley, who is the Executive Vice President, Finance, IT, and CFO, just a small title there. Check the power that's coming out on this stage. Dominique, Grégoire, who is the Vice President and Chief Financial Officer for Alberta Blue Cross, and Patty Wickson is coming as the Executive Director for Alberta Health Services. So join me in welcoming them to our stage, please. Come on around and let me allow you to get into these fabulous chairs here. And yeah, it's quite the, look at you navigating without a problem, and we were concerned for nothing, absolutely. We're good? So welcome to the stage. And so my first question just simply is, tell us a little bit about who you are. How did you get to this stage? Tell us a bit about the organization. What do we need to know?
Sure. So my name is Helen Wesley. I'm the CFO at Enmax. And Enmax, for those of you who don't know, is a power company in Calgary. I've been there for about 2.5 years. I had to learn the power industry because I'm an oil and gas gal. And I'm really happy to be here.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. Dominique.
Hi, Dominique, Grégoire, CFO, Alberta Blue Cross. A bit about me, I come from Montreal, yes. I did live 3 years in Paris, moved to Calgary, and now I live in Edmonton, so 4 major cities. Quite excited about that. A bit about Alberta Blue Cross. We were founded in 1948 as a private, not-for-profit organization that provides benefits, which is health, dental, life, and disability, to different organizations. So we have 3 main mandates. The main one is we support Alberta Health, the government of Alberta, with their programs. So we do the administration on their behalf. We do provide employee benefits to all large employers and smaller employers. We have 2 of our clients here on stage. Thank you, Enmax. Thank you, Alberta Health Services. And also to individuals, whether you're self-employed or in between jobs, we do provide all these benefits as well. So just a bit about Alberta Blue Cross. To give you an idea of size, we're reaching about 1,200 employees. And in 2017, we processed over $2.5 billion worth of claims. That's it.
Hello, and I'm Patty Wickson. I'm from Alberta Health Services. I'm sure most of you will know who Alberta Health Services is, whether you've used our system or not, but proud to have worked for Alberta Health Services for 13 years. I've been in the healthcare field for 27 years, working in BC before coming to Alberta. And in my current role, it's pretty unique. I'm now the Executive Director for Innovation, Impact, and Evaluation. I usually don't like to lead with title. I like to lead without title. However, we do have titles. So I do get to be really in a space where we can be creative. We can look at bringing innovative solutions into healthcare, and I think now is the time to be able to do this. I'm very passionate about our patients and our citizens, so I've done a lot of work involving citizens so their voice is heard in healthcare and they're represented, but as well the providers. I'm really passionate about creating safe spaces that we can work in so that we can be our best at work. So I've enjoyed the pleasure, like I said, of being with Alberta Health Services for 13 years, and I'm just very happy to be here today.
Great. Well, thank you so much, all of you, for joining us and sharing one of your most prized possessions, your personal time. As we've learned about today, we're managing our own time. So, Patty, maybe I can begin with you, if you would. 2018 International Women's Day campaign theme for this year was #PressForProgress. Why is it important for you to be here today?
I think there's a number of reasons why it's important for us to be here today. And, you know, I just want to celebrate everybody for taking the time to be here today. Because as women, I think it's very important that we invest in ourselves. And so I think to create a movement and to be able to look at press, and I don't almost say press for power. I think it's a very unique way. And as women, we're not good at celebrating ourselves. We're actually not good at putting ourselves first. And so I think that movement is one thing that's now showcased who women are internationally. And it doesn't matter our diversity, our culture, our religious beliefs. We're all individual human beings. And so I think it has really strengthened that ability to showcase who we are as people and who we are as women. There's a lot of other movements too, such as #MeToo and also #TimesUp. And as I mentioned, also psychological safety. So this is an era where I think our voice needs to be heard. We need to be able to speak up and have our own identity and be heard. And so I think it is an important movement, and it's an important movement as we share our different experiences going forward. So that's what I'd say. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Dominique, what about from your perspective?
Oh, Press for Progress, you know, when I think back 40, 50 years ago, we were thinking about that already. And honestly, I thought we would be much further along today than we actually are. So we're actually moons away, I hope not, from gender parity. I just want to go back to what Gianna said this morning. At least I'm proud to say that at Alberta Blue Cross, we are beating the odds in the fact that we have 33% of our executive team that are female, not quite like Enmax. And actually, 4 members out of 9 of our board members are female, so that's very above the 15% national average. Although our employees, we have 65% female, so we're not quite there yet in terms of, but I do believe we're going to get there. When I think about the importance of being here today, it's like I'd like to thank you, women here today, and also the handful of men. How many men do we have in the audience? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so welcome. What I'd like to say is I have a little story. At my dinner table, I had guests over, really good friends of ours, and he's the CEO and president of a roofing company. And I always ask when I meet other people, like, do you have women in your executive team or do you have women on your board? And his wife replied, why would they? It's a roofing company. And I go, it's a business. So my best friend doesn't even get it. So no, they don't have any women yet on that board, and I'm kind of pushing. I said, bring me on that. But so that's why I acknowledge the men, because it's not about the men and the women. It's about the men and the women that get it, and the men and women that don't get it. And that's not my saying. That's actually Kim Campbell, who I listened to in Edmonton a couple years ago. She said it so well. It's about the people that get it. So thank you for the men that are here and the women that are here, because you get it, and together we're going to make it.
Beautiful.
So for me, a day like today is a day of investing in ourselves, which I think is really important and something that we don't spend enough time doing. It's also a chance to step back and reflect. I always find that if I manage to get away for a conference or something that's a little bit not to do with my day-to-day, I come back to work fresher with a different perspective, rejuvenated, hopefully some more energy. And hopefully everybody today will walk away with a lot of energy, because I think when you put this many women in a room, that's what happens. But I would fully agree that change won't happen with just us. And so part of what I'm interested in is continuing to have the discussion with men who get it, who understand this is a business imperative. It's not about necessarily fairness and equality, which of course is in there, but there's also a business imperative here. You get better thinking, you get better results, you get better outcomes with more diverse people around the table. So I guess for me, important to keep this conversation going, important to remember that we all have to participate and help each other and support one another, and that'll come out, I think, more as we talk during the day.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. And Patty, back to you again. What does it mean to be a woman in leadership today?
Well, first, as I said, I'm very proud to be here today. And I think as being a woman in leadership, it really is about empowering ourselves to be the best person that we can be. I think when I look at things around leadership, I like to use a slogan about be the change. So be the change that you want to see. And I think we all have it within us as leaders to do that. But I think a lot of it comes back to what do we want to leave? And so when I look at what I want to leave, I want to be able to leave a legacy, whether it's a leadership legacy or a legacy to my children or my friends or my family. How did I show up and how did I be my best? And I think as a leader, that's really important quality to have. When I would look at the role that I'm doing with an innovation, it's very different. It's predominantly men. But I think that there needs to be a mix, and there needs to be a mix between both men and women, because we bring different skills and qualities to the table. So when, just recently, I was at the Inventures Conference, actually here in this room, and I had the pleasure of listening to Ariana, and Ari. And she has been studying women and men in leadership. And some of her points that she really resonated with me in my new role was women do have the ability to, one, is create great connections. We also foster really good relationships. And that's really important to us, is relationships that we maintain no matter who we are, at work, at home, are really personal and professional to us. But also the ability to create meaningful relationships, more to getting better outcomes, and what you mentioned about the outcomes that we want to achieve in terms of innovation. So I'll give you an example of that. When we're looking at innovation and you put a bottle of shampoo in front of a man and you put a bottle of shampoo in front of a woman, men will look at that bottle of shampoo and think, that's shampoo. And again, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, I'm just saying what's the difference and what skills do we bring to the table. As a woman, we'll look at that shampoo and we'll look at, wow, look at the bottle, look at the branding, look at the color. I wonder what the ingredients are in it. I wonder where it's sold in the store. So there's definitely a lot of difference on how we look at things as men and women. So I think that that's a unique skill set in coming into my role, and that's what I try to foster, is that ability to create good relationships with people, listen, empower people to be their best, and I get to be in a space that's really, really creative, and that's fun. So that's what I'd like to say. Thanks.
Well, Patty, you couldn't have picked a better example because, yeah, I just looked at the bottle of shampoo and said, yeah, it's shampoo. I don't care what the ingredients are, and look what happened. So apparently I've got a lot to learn from you. And what I'm loving as well is you're talking about leaving a legacy. And we all leave a legacy. When you leave this role that you're in right now, you will leave a legacy. Whatever that role is, staying within your own company, going to another organization, you'll leave a legacy. People are going to talk about you when you leave. And so the question is, what are they going to say about you? And are they going to say what you want them to say about you? So Dr. Heidi Grant-Halverson has been on our stage and even in Calgary here via video with us a few years back. And she invites us to go to our dear friends, and especially with the network that you're creating today, and to ask your friends, if you didn't know me as well as you do, how would you describe me? So what is your brand? What is your intention? And are your intentions and their perception one and the same? So a really great opportunity to think about the legacy that we're going to leave behind here. And the shampoo that I'm going to start using and see what I can do with that. So thank you so much for that, Patty. Helen, what do you tell yourself when you look and you get discouraged by the statistics and the demographics of women, especially in the senior leaders' roles that they're in today? Today I ask, and maybe if we could just do that survey really quickly again so you can see it. How many individual contributors are in the audience today? Raise your hand if you're an individual contributor. Okay, beautiful. Supervisor and manager level. Supervisor, manager level. Okay, director level, moving into the executive. We've got a few. Vice presidential level again, where were you? And C-suite, CEO, CFO. Okay, so again, there are fewer of those roles, but what do you tell yourselves when you see the statistics and you get a bit discouraged?
So I have the pleasure of living in a bit of a bubble at the moment at Enmax. This is the first time in my career that I have been sitting around an executive table where I wasn't the only woman. And I guess Gianna gave you guys some insights this morning. We've got a large group of women around the table, and we have two terrific men who have been getting better at dealing with women all the time. But so I day to day, I live in a bit of a bubble. And every once in a while I get a bit of a reminder of that, and I've had a couple of recently. I attended an industry conference a couple of months ago. I don't know, probably 1,000 people in a room, and you could have filled, the number of women with 2 or 3 rows of tables. So you walk into a room like that, and that day, for whatever reason, my shoulders just dropped, and I thought, oh, come on, really? We're not further along than this? It's not oil and gas, it's electricity. You don't need to be an engineer to progress in quite the same way. It's a much more commercial business. So I had that event, and I did some grumbling and talked to some friends, and then recently I went to a CFO conference in the US, and I got the list of participants, and there were 40 people on the list, and I went down the list of names. There was only one other name that I thought might have been a woman. The name was Lupo, so I wasn't quite sure. So I showed up and thought, okay, 40 CFOs, and then there's only one woman, me. Seriously. So at those times, I have to remind myself, first of all, I have to stand back and take a deep breath and say, remind yourself you're there. So that's a good thing, number one. And then second of all, I have to remind myself that diversity comes in various shapes and sizes. It's not just gender. So I'm on a board, and until very, very recently, that board was 6 white 65-year-old men and me. And on the surface, you would say, holy smokes, what's that like? It must be hard. These guys are all very diverse thinkers from a diverse background who value diversity. And so I am reminded from time to time, diversity comes in all shapes and sizes. And then the third thing that I think about is a saying that a friend of mine reminded me of a couple of weeks ago. And she said, you have to learn to rest, not quit when you're tired. So as we've said, this is a long journey. Change comes slowly. It shows up in various shapes and forms, but it's a long journey. And what we see ahead of us isn't going to be rapid change. So you have to remember the old, analogy of a switchback as you climb a mountain. You got to stop and rest, pick up your pack and get back on there and go again. So, tying back to your analogy question, that's the legacy I want behind me. I want to be remembered as somebody who's been persistent and has been brave and has not quit when she was tired.
Beautiful. Wow. Some acknowledgement for that. Do we self-acknowledge enough? And that's an interesting thing. So the word that I heard you say was that, you live in a bubble. And when I think about a bubble, I think about a bubble rising up. Yeah. And as that bubble is rising up, it can become a beacon and a shining light for others to see. So good on you, good on the organization, and I trust you've made a really great choice in being there and choose to stay there and continue with that example. So Dominique, one of the questions you and I chatted about before the event, though, even was taking a look at, as a leader in your organization, how are you pressing for progress?
How am I pressing for progress? Well, I do believe our leadership style will eventually press for progress, and I like to think that my leadership and my colleagues' leadership style is one of empowerment. And we are in a transformational phase right now where we do want to empower more of the staff. It is critical to develop the talent that we have, and we do have a lot of talent. When people ask me, what's your biggest accomplishment? I don't say, oh, we double the sales or we double this. It's, oh, we develop this individual. It's to see this individual grow within an organization and being promoted to the next level. That's the most rewarding for me as a leader, is to see the development of individual. What we do is also we bring the visibility. Like we need to bring those second and third layer individual visible to the executive team or even to the board. So we have board events, and we'll bring a couple of directors to start interacting with the executive team and the board of directors. And as a leaders, I've always said, I've always wanted somebody to want my position. I want somebody in my team to be hungry to have my position, and surround myself with strong people, because this will keep me on my toes, literally. This will force me to do the best job that I can while mentoring my succession, leaving me accessible to look at other opportunities and not feeling guilty about the succession. So build your succession, have somebody strong enough that wants your job on your team.
Fair enough. Excellent. And Helen, maybe I'll start with you, or actually, my apologies, Patty. Patty, maybe I could start with you with this question, just because I'm focusing on the question so much, and I'm thinking in this moment right now, and I want to talk about women's leadership-focused initiatives that currently exist in your organization, but building on these last 2 points as well around diversity and inclusion. So, as a gay man, it's not lost on me that, we don't have other visible forms of diversity on our panel today. That doesn't mean they're not happening in your organizations, though. So what are we doing around diversity and inclusion within your environments? And so maybe if we could speak with you.
Yeah, so within Alberta Health Services, our president and CEO is a female, Dr. Verna Yu. She's been at the helm now for 2 years. We've been through 9 different CEOs, and we're almost 10 years old now as being one entity. So it's really amazing that we've been through that many CEOs, but looking at our organization and Dr. Verna Yu, I see a switch and I see a change in terms of what she's doing for our healthcare system. And when I look at her and the ability, actually our whole executive team, we're pretty balanced equally between men and women in various vice president roles, senior operating officer roles. So, and healthcare, is pretty dominant with a female, but we've got a lot of now males coming into the different professions as well. So in terms of Alberta Health Services, we do have a leads framework that we do use as part of our organization. But also, I think Verna's been really good at keeping the executive leadership team open and available. And they do leadership rounds now within the province. We have 4.2 million people that we care for in Alberta Health Services, and our geography is so huge. But that executive takes the time to go around and get to know people. We are in the people side of business. No matter what we do, we have to care for people, but we have to care for ourselves. So as leaders, we have certain principles that we work with within Alberta Health Services. One of them is to create a great vision for our leaders. We also want to, though, empower our leaders and create talent. And I think there's opportunity around the succession planning that you speak about that's really, really important, is how do we build good leaders, but not just that, good people, because we do care for people and we need to care for ourselves. So there is an executive education program we have. A lot of people are put into that program, and then they work in cohorts, and we have the business school that supports that. So there is a lot of real big focus around leadership and what we do in Alberta Health Services.
Excellent. Dominique, what about at Alberta Blue Cross?
As we grew over the years, we actually formalized a Women in Leadership program called WIL. And basically what it did is sponsored by the 3 executive ladies that we have on the team, and gathering all our executive leaders, women in leadership in the organization, with a guest speaker, encouraging some discussion a couple of times a year. But at this point, we're ready to take it to the next step. So basically, we're forming a committee that will run the program by consulting with other large organizations in the Edmonton area with Service and Stantec, like what do like best practice. So we want to evolve our program to not only involve the women that are currently in leadership, but all the women in the organization, and to a certain extent all the men too, because it is leadership. So that's an evolution that's going on. On the more formal side now, we have a leadership program. It's called LEAD, for Leadership, Exploration, and Development. So basically where employees have to apply, and they do get interviewed, and they do get accepted. So we do select 20 individuals per year to come into this program, where there's 2 things. There's a formal mentorship, so they will be assigned either an executive or director in the organization to spend 3 hours per month, 2 sessions of 1.5 hours on a one-on-one basis for formal mentorship. And also with the other 19 participants, they will get some leadership development, some leadership skills, and also they will be working on an actual business problem that the executive team have come up with. So, and then at the end of the program, there's 2 business solutions that they go throughout the program. So at midpoint and at the end, they do come and present to the executive team what they've done, or their solution, their proposed solution. And I'm proud to say that we've actually implemented some of their recommendations. So it is coming forward. This is our 4th year. We're starting our 4th year with this program, and it's really picking up. So it's really developing the talent of those individuals. And what I'd like to say is those participants, when they come in on board, they do a full slew of tests, the leadership skills, and they do also a 360. So if they already are in a leadership role, we'll do a full 360. So as a mentor, I sit down with the mentee and to go through the evaluation. It really helps with the mentoring program. Yeah.
And I can just echo, our program is exactly what you've just described as well in Alberta Health Services. So that's really great to see. And I've had the fortunate opportunity, my boss currently is in that program. And so I was part of doing his evaluation and giving him the feedback. And I think that's been really important. And what it set me up is I was in a succession program. And I remember doing my first peer evaluation and putting myself out there to get other people to evaluate my skills and my talent. And it was the first time I kind of took a step back and said, wow, look what they said about me. I had no idea. And so I think the ability, I've kept that within myself to be a vulnerable leader. So every year in my performance appraisal from that time, I actually send my performance appraisal out to my staff and to the advisors that I work with, because that's how I get the true feedback on how I'm doing on a day-to-day basis and open myself up to say, how can I be better and be myself? So, thanks.
Wow, that growth mindset, always learning, right? Always learning. And Helen, did you want to add to that question, or because I've got a juicy question for you coming up?
Go into the juicy one then.
Okay,
I'm ready.
You're ready for the juicy one? Okay. Michelle Obama. She recently said in response to the question, when will America have a female president? And her response, when women are ready. So what do you think she meant? And what's the takeaway for us all?
So how many people went to see Michelle when she was here in town a few weeks ago? Pretty amazing Friday afternoon, for me anyway. You know, I've watched her from afar and always paid attention to what she does and what she says, and I find her very authentic. And so when she was asked that question, and you know, you say it really quickly and you think, oh, that's simple, when women are ready. What is she talking about? So I sat back, and it was the one thing that stuck with me. Lots of interesting stuff that came out of the conversation, but it was the one thing that stuck with me from that evening, because at the end of the day, what it made me think about is, you know, women want to progress, want senior roles, want to be given opportunities, but how do we help each other through that? And her point was that so many American women didn't vote for Hillary, they voted for Donald Trump. So all of Hillary's credentials, all of her background, all of her experience in office was not good enough to beat out Donald Trump. That was her real point. So what is it to think about as a woman when you hear that? For me, it was this question of how we judge one another, I think, very often more harshly than we judge our male colleagues. So we know, because of how we've had to work, what we've had to tackle, how we've had to present ourselves, how brave we've had to be, et cetera, to get to where we are, that it's a pretty high bar. And so we hold our peers to that pretty high bar. So for me, it was an opportunity to step back and think about where recently might I have done that? What situation was I in? How often do I do that? Do I see other people doing that? And just a bit of a chance to, sort of check myself on it. And that isn't to say that we should let one another off the hook or we should expect less from one another. But I think sometimes just thinking about whether or not we're judging too harshly is a good question. And I think there's another element to all of this, which is that in order to be incredibly successful or to progress through an organization, however it works at home and whatever your home environment is, you end up, in my case anyway, dividing and conquering on things. And that means that there are things I've had to let go of that my friends who aren't working are really, really good at and I suck at. And so there are times where, the achiever in me wants to be good at everything, and I have to step back and say, no, actually, I can't be really good at that. That's okay, because I'm going to focus my efforts over here. And I think that's where, both in how we judge ourselves and how we judge one another, we have to think about that, the balance of where we're going to focus, what are we doing, where are we putting our energy, and where is it okay to be great, and where is it okay to be not great?
So this is kind of hard to hear because there's a couple of things that are going on there. I mean, one is my understanding, if I understood you correctly, I just want to make sure I understood you, was that women are harder on women than they are on men. Did I hear that right?
So, I mean, I think one of the dangers at a conference like this is you generalize.
Yeah.
So I have observed at times, how's that? Good?
You're reminding me of a feedback course I took. There are times when,
Yes, not every woman judges every other woman harshly. But I think there's a little voice in our head, in my head anyway. So why don't we do this? We'll just say it's my head. We won't say it's anybody else's head, okay? In my head, that will sit back and think, okay, I'm not sure she, did as well as that as she could have, or I'm not sure about this, or I'm not sure about that. And I think, as I said, because we are pushing ourselves constantly, I think it's just easier sometimes to default to that rather than the generous place. So I may be the only one who does this, but I've certainly experienced it from other women, particularly early on in my career, and I found that really hard to take because at that point I'm thinking, I'm the eager beaver, I'm ready to dive in and do anything. Why are you pushing me down? And so I'm very conscious of it and try to be very thoughtful about that. Somebody used the analogy years ago of crabs in a bucket. I don't know if you can picture this, but there's a pile of crabs in a bucket and they're trying to climb on top of one another to get out. And the crab at the top of the bucket knocks the other crabs down. Like, that is not an image that you want of women helping each other.
No.
But I mean, I'd be curious to see a show of hands. Has anybody experienced anything that feels like that?
Wow.
Okay. So
Actually, I'd like to add to that because I did.
get me off the hook.
I did witness that.
Help us rise up here. Help us rise up.
I did witness that, and I was just telling my colleagues before lunch that my biggest hurdle in my career was from a woman. So hands down, I've totally witnessed that.
Yeah, and in my case, so this happened to me 15 years ago, and it was a woman, and the woman enjoyed a very privileged position of knowledge with the CEO, and I was in a role where I was working a lot with the CEO. I was doing investor relations, traveling, lots and lots of conversations, and I think she didn't like that. She didn't like that, and I could talk a language with him that she couldn't talk because she didn't know the language of business and finance in the same way. And so there were just insidious little things that happened here and there. And there was a point where I was pregnant and going off on mat leave, and I've never been so angry in my life. My body was shaking. I was so angry with this woman, and so. It's something I just think we need to be honest with ourselves and be careful about it.
Wow, Patty.
Yeah, and I've experienced something very similar. So as you move up in your career and us being vulnerable and speaking today, I think as women, we're hardest on ourselves. And so when I hear the ability to create your tribe, and I think that's really important, is who you surround yourself with. And some of these questions might be coming up, I know that we might speak to. But it's very true how hard we can be on each other as women, and experiencing that is pretty devastating. So we need to stay resilient. We have experiences that really can impact us and make that crucial decision. Is it going to move us to the next level, or is it actually going to debilitate us and take us down? And so we need to be able to support ourselves. When I think of our movement and what we're trying to do, and this whole conference, it is about coming here today, celebrating you, but also being able to empower us.
Yeah, go, please.
Sorry, just one other thought that has occurred to me, and I've tried to make it at other, in other scenarios like this. I think one of the things we also have to watch for, though, is when we start attributing everything that's happening to us because it's happening to us as a woman. So you can get into a track that says, oh, I didn't get that job because I was a woman, or I didn't get that, this happened to me because I was a woman, or the person in the room wasn't judging me fairly, whatever. It's easy to get into that mode, and I've also found I have to check myself and say, no, actually, you didn't get that job because you did a shitty job, or you didn't...
Say it like it is. Just say it like it is. Yeah.
Well, you have to have these conversations with yourself, because I, anyway, can get in, if I'm worked up about something, I can get in a mindset where there's a lot of injustice in the world. And if I go to my tribe, sometimes my tribe can feed that, rather than say, Helen, actually you did a shitty job. They'd still be my friends if they said that. So all my caution is just, it is important to be aware of the differences. It's important to think about these things, but not to walk into every room thinking I'm walking into this room as a woman or the only woman. You have to walk into that room as yourself and not have that lead.
So we need to speak our truth. We need to hold men accountable. And we need to help each other rise up. So Dominique, what are some of the things that are happening within your organization to empower women to reach their highest potential? It was almost like you guys wrote these questions for me.
I know, but I actually, just before I get there, I would like to build on that, because you did say something about things happened to me. well, that's the victim, reaction. I believe in this model about the 100% responsibility. I'm sure some of you have heard of the 100% zero, 100% responsibility. And that's all that in light with accountability is like, take 100% responsibility for the success, for your success. Don't let the others tell you what to do or play the victim. Don't have the attitude, like, it's so much more powerful when things happen because of you and not when things happen to you. You're so powerless when things happen to you and you just play defeated and stay in that bubble. So be yourself, go out there and take 100% responsibility and make things happen because of you.
Beautiful.
So,
And so, is that a response as well to the other? Let's go in. Can I ask that question again for you? But thank you for that, because I love these opportunities for clarity. As I spoke with you before this panel, one of the things I shared with you is just the fact that the panel is brilliant when I become wallpaper. When this is them eavesdropping in on a conversation between three powerful women, that's when the panel is effective. So thank you for that discussion, your candor, your honesty, your vulnerability. I greatly respect that courage. Thank you. Thank you. And so the question is, how does your organization empower women to reach their highest potential, Dominique?
well, we do have the LEAD program, but when I think of leadership, it doesn't mean the same thing for everybody. So it's important to help our employees to realize what is your maximum potential, what are your strengths and what are your skills? Because if everybody aspire to be CEO, we'd be in trouble. So it's important to realize where you want to be. And to go back to one of the comments this morning is, don't be afraid to commit to what you want to be. Because if we don't know you aspire to be a VP, we will never look at you. We listen to the people who aspire, so don't be afraid. Voice your opinion. I want to be a VP. To me, that's my ultimate goal, and I want to get there. But if you don't tell us, how can we mentor you, coach you to get there? A lot of people, I think that the reason is we don't is because, what if I never make it? Then I'm a failure, and everybody look down on you. But no, speak up and get there, and then we will, through that leadership, that LEAD program that we have, that really helps our women leaders in the organization, even men leaders, to realize what are their strengths and their skills and where they want to go. Some people did come out of that program wanting to go in and realize, no, this is not for me. So it's important to realize where you want to be in life and commit to it and speak up.
Here we go.
Can I just add a comment to that? One of the things that I've learned over time is your definition of success changes. So, when you're 25, you might have one view of what success is, and when you're 40, you might have quite another different view, and there's nothing wrong with that. And to your point, having adjusted your view, maybe it's downwards, is not a sign of failure. It's actually oftentimes a sign of understanding what makes you happy, what gives you energy, what's the right thing for you and your family. It's a whole mix of things. And so I just think remembering that, yes, it's good to have goals, but it's also okay for them to change over time is important.
And that's reality, right? I mean, life is that way. We don't know what's happening tomorrow, but we know what happened yesterday. So where are we going, and how are we going to get there? And so, Patty, can you name another woman who has had a tremendous impact on you as a leader? Why or how did this person impact your career or life?
Sure, thank you. Andrea Robertson, she is the president and CEO of STARS. I've worked with Andrea for a number of years, and I actually was in my executive MBA program. I had to write an essay on a leader that inspired me and a leader that was not so inspirational. It's funny, it's so easy for us to go to those not so inspirational moments or things that have happened to us, but to really be clear about those extraordinary leaders. So Andrea is one that I've looked up to for a number of years. She's a very close friend, I would say, a mentor and a role model. And why do I look upon her? There's a couple of really key reasons, and a lot of them is her quality, and her quality as a leader, but also just a quality as a woman. And all the difficult times that we had before we became one in Alberta Health Services and we were in our Calgary Health Authority, I remember the difficult times when our budgets were tight, and she would come to a meeting, a leadership meeting, and be real and be honest with us and say, I know these are difficult times, I know you have to make difficult decisions, but one, I've got your back, I'm here for you. And she really genuinely showed her heart all of the time. And I thought, wow, if she can be in those difficult times real and understand us and say, like, I'm right with you. I have the same challenges being the VP of this hospital as you do. So I really honored and cherished her ability to be real, to just be authentic and be vulnerable as a leader and just really lead with her heart. And she was very, very passionate, and it was about her people. And I'll tell you that Foothills Medical Center meant everything to her. And you could see that in everything that she did. So not only was she a role model, but her words meant something. So it wasn't just actions. She actually, and a lot of times we can speak words. It's the actions that we have, and our actions mean a lot. And so I wanted to see a leader that was showing that action. And so she was just so powerful that I won't, she's left a legacy to me, and that's what's important.
There we go. Well, I have more questions I would love to ask you, but I really would love to hear what the audience would like to know. Are you open to hearing some questions from the audience? Can I step down? All right. So raise your hand. Let me know if you have a question, and I will come to you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Bahare. I'm research engineer in Nova Chemicals. So from start of the day today, we talked about how we can help women becoming leader, how we can help them to be confident and help themselves, and at work, for example, finding mentors. So one area that we didn't talk about, maybe because it's more personal, I don't really hear talking about this area, is that how important is it about the partner we choose for our life and what kind of impact it has in our life, because we see like traditionally women are chosen or they choose between their options. But it's critically important of like they have the chance of choosing even their options. And how important is that to have the support from the partner? Because some partners, they have a huge role in motivating women to be who they are or stopping them. How have we touched that area in like helping women to be leaders?
Well, interesting question.
That was a little tiny question.
Yeah, tiny, loaded question. You don't necessarily choose your partner in life. I kind of fell in love and married that guy 30 years ago. So yeah, I'm lucky. He's a professional. He's CFO as well. So we totally support each other. We've had 3 children. And I'm a career woman. I'm very maternal, but I decided that I'm not going to be a stay-at-home mom, and that's a decision that I made and that we made together. So we did exactly what Ariana was referring to. We alternate. So, one day was his turn to release the babysitter. Oh, was my turn today, but I had a last-minute meeting. I would call him, and we alternate. So supporting from your partner is critical. It's key. And I think it has a big reason to as where I am today, but also a big reason to where he is today. Just one little funny comment. We've always said behind every successful man, there's a great woman. But this morning, when we asked behind every successful woman, there's a tribe of women. But there is the support of a great man in my world.
So I guess I can be very vulnerable now to that. So I was married for 21 years and actually had an extremely supportive husband at the time. And it was about raising our 3 children and making sure that we were both good and both good for each other. He was very supportive of my career and always was very proud of the things I did. So I think that's really, really important. However, now I'm single. And so that changes the dynamics. It changes the dynamics of the family, but it also changes the dynamics of just looking at now not having that partner. So I'm single, and I have to have the ability to stay strong for myself. And so with that, I think it's the self-talk, but it's also believing in yourself. It's the confidence. It is your tribe. I've got wonderful friends that, you know, I have different tribes that I go around for different reasons, but I know when I need them, and I need them to lift me up, and I rely on them. But it's great, and it's a great feeling. So my transition's been a bit different, but I look at it now, and I'm still able to be successful where I am today, but it has been a bumpy road, and it's real, and we're all human beings, and it's real. So I think just celebrate where you are and where you've gotten to.
Yeah, and maybe I'll just add on that note, my husband and I are big planners, and when we first got together and got married and bought a house, this was a house in which we were going to have 2 children, and 5 years from now we'd have a conversation about this house. 9 months later we were moving. So that taught us very quickly that as much as it's nice to have long-term plans, life changes. Life is what happens while you're making plans. And that spilled over into some advice that somebody gave me once, which has proven to be the most helpful advice ever, which is don't try to solve a problem 5 years from now that doesn't even exist yet. I was all in a froth because I was worried that our current childcare arrangements weren't going to work 4 years down the line when Katie was in grade 6 and Jack was in grade 8. And this woman just looked at me like, you're crazy. She was an engineer. Her husband was an engineer. They had 2 boys. She said 1 year at a time. And that was, the simplest, most helpful feedback I ever got. And I have passed it on, I don't know how many times, because it really helped to reframe my thinking and help me to contain the size of the problem. So we probably could go on all day, honestly, but.
Well, we have another question here, right? Should be on. Go ahead.
My question is, what do you think happens? Oh, sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. My name's Trina. I'm a product manager with Shawcor. And my question is, what do you think happens along the way with women? That as I was going through my degree in business, by the 4th year, it seemed like half the women were gone. And even still, earlier this year, I was at one of our commercial team building events, 60 people going, all ages, but I was the only woman. It's like, you look at this room and you can see how many women have really come together, which is amazing. But there are so many times where you think, where did all these women go? And that women that even have degrees, friends of mine that did finish, they're in some sort of an administrative role, or they're not actually applying for these jobs. They're not building up their quality to end up in these senior positions.
Well, maybe I'll start with that if that's okay. So not to put a perception out there, but I think as women, and I heard Arlene Dickinson speak at Adventures Conference, and wow, she said a couple of things. It's about reinventing ourselves, and it is not about perfection. It's about execution and excellence. So I think a lot of times when we look at ourselves as women, or before we go forward, we have to look at that job description and make sure we have every qualification on that job description. But however, men are a little different. They will actually maybe only have 75% of those qualifications and still go for that position or that job. So speaking to that, I think we're pretty hard on ourselves, and as women, to be able to be okay. But being hard on ourselves can take us out of the game and to not put ourselves up for opportunities. So I think one question we didn't get to that we were addressing is the ability to have self-care. And so one thing I've learned along the way is to be able to be good with myself. If I'm not good with myself, I cannot show up and lead other people. So that was a really big aha moment for me, to be able to go away and invest in myself. And now Ariana spoke about some of those rituals that you need to do, about meditation, about caring for yourself, getting enough sleep. All of those are really, really important. And it gets tougher and tougher as you get up higher in different parts of the organization. You need to be resilient. And you have to create that resiliency within yourself. And so I think it comes to investing in yourself and a lot of self-care along the way.
Totally agree, and we have to learn to get out of our comfort zone. We've heard that many times. But listen to this, if we apply to a job where we have 100% of the criteria, are we being challenged? Is this really interesting? No, you have to be nervous. You have to feel challenged, because then you'll stay on your toes, and you'll feel it'll be that much more rewarding when you do succeed. Whereas, like, put yourself out there. It's not in our nature. Totally support what you're saying, but we have to learn to get out of that comfort zone. Face the room with all the men. When you go to that CFO conference in the U.S., you should come to the Canadian ones. We were 20% female, so. It was in Halifax. It was awesome. But get yourself out there and speak up. It's time that we speak up. 50%, I mean, the business schools produce 50% women. Why don't we have 50% of women in executive and in board? It should be there.
Okay, and maybe I'll just add a slightly different twist. So from the show of hands in this room, there's a large number of people who make hiring decisions every day. Where I think we need to focus is on doing a much better job of identifying the skill sets that we need to fill those roles, and then figuring out whether or not we know how to interview to find out whether or not people have those skill sets. So there's some work going on at the moment. A couple of my colleagues on boards who we're trying to get together and figure out how do we, accelerate this issue of how many women are on boards. And I keep saying we just need to go upstream in the problem. We need to go upstream to who's making the decisions about hiring, and we need to help train, raise awareness, help people understand why interviewing for emotional intelligence, organizational awareness, all the kinds of things that are so critical to how you get on in a job. Whether you have the technical skills or not, typically is, it's less than 50% of the battle once you're in senior roles. It's how do you navigate the organization? I would submit, most of the time, we don't interview for those things. So I actually think there's work we could all be doing to help populate the ranks of management with more women by doing a better job of understanding what we're looking for, being more generous in how we interview people, and more thoughtful and strategic as we do that.
Panel, sadly, your last question is coming from right here.
Hi, Helen, Dominique, and Patty. Sorry, I'm fighting a cold. Alberta Blue Cross is helping me with all my prescriptions, so thank you for that.
I have a cold too.
My name is Nitu Sidhu, and I'm representing all the wonderful ladies in the room from HEB Financial. So, what's been said here, it's super inspiring, and I think you all touched on it, but it's women having a voice and having that tribe of other women and men supporting them. But as you have all likely experienced, going up the sort of corporate or organizational ranks and getting to a level of executive, you're going to need to use your voice and use it in a time when it's difficult and you're making tough calls or you're presenting opposing views, and oftentimes that can be seen as challenging or potentially aggressive or not collaborative, and women are known to be nurturing and build great relationships, and sometimes you can be labeled as sort of bitchy, but if that was a man, that same label wouldn't be applied. So I'm just curious to hear from you where you've experienced that in your career and how you dealt with it in a way that didn't create a glass ceiling for you.
I'll start with that. So dealt with it many, many, many times. I've still got scars. I'm actually, was 6'3" when I started. Now I'm only 6 feet tall. It is a challenge, no question. And the whole concept of intellectual honesty and going for something that you believe in is critical to me. And if there's one thing I struggle with, it's people who will say one thing outside of a meeting room and then will not raise their voice when controversy hits in the meeting room. I think the number one thing that I would offer in that respect is figure out who your stakeholders are and what they think and feel about the issue it is that you want to go to bat for, and build some allegiance outside the room before you find yourself in that situation. And that that has proven to be the biggest change for me in terms of how I tackle those kinds of circumstances. Now, there are times where you end up standing alone. I turn red in those circumstances. That's just my body's natural reaction to feeling threatened. So then it's even really more visible to everybody. And I've just learned that's me. Too bad, so sad. This is my idea. I was hired because of my ideas, so here they are. And tried not to take it so personally when things don't go my way. And that's one thing, if I again, it's generalizing, but you know, women will have a disagreement and leave a meeting and go back to their offices and feel very, very bad about it. Men will have a disagreement, leave the meeting and go and have a beer. There's something to learn from the way men tackle those kinds of things. So I'll stop there just because I know we're short.
Well, I'll just go back to that 100% responsibility. And not taking it personally is a big thing for me, because it's only with hindsight that I go back and I said, oh yeah, I was facing this situation. But I just unconsciously fought it because I believe in my point, and I put it out there. I got out of my comfort zone and I make it happen. So I took action and make it happen by being curious, because I do my homework before, and building the alliances. When you bring a new point to a team, make sure you talk one-on-one with a few of them so that you know the opposition's point of view, or you get some other point of view, so you know that you're not going to be alone at the table when you bring up that idea.
And just probably final comments. I think it's the ability to be able to lead with purpose. And when you come into your passion and what you're really passionate about, it's easy to find your voice. And then it's easy to speak about things that are meaningful to you and that are going to add value. I think all of your comments are really important. It's sometimes difficult to be able to speak the truth and be real. And there is moments where I've experienced that in different meetings or different opportunities, but I think it is being vulnerable, but knowing your voice, knowing politically when you go into a room, you kind of have that political sense about you, and sometimes it's hard to describe, but there's knowing what to say, when not to say it. And so you can be attuned to that as a leader when you get into those higher levels in the organization. But that's just what I'd like to finish with.
And maybe just to round it out, you know, often what happens is we'll witness one of our staff in a precarious situation like this, and I guess I would just say I'm always inclined to try and help, and to try and help that person have a positive experience when they've taken, you know, when they've gone out on a limb and taken a risk. So something else we can all do to support.
So I guess I'm hearing two things. One, behind every successful woman there's a tribe. And every one of us is also a member of a tribe. So how do we help each other rise up? How do we help each other get to where we want to go, or get to where they want to be? Your honesty, transparency, and truth today has been inspiring. I thank you for your courage. I thank you for your candor. I thank you for your leadership. Have an amazing afternoon. Thank you.